All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rechak Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations unto the Akim, out here pushing this gospel in truth and in sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. This is the brother Quanawath coming back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. You know, and in this lesson, as you see right here on the screen, right, I want to speak on Stockholm Syndrome, you know, which is what you see today, right, within, you know, majority Israelites, right, which the Israelites are the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, as well as you have the Israelite foreigners, which are Israelites, right, throughout history have been scattered into these different nations, and throughout history, right, or throughout time, right, began to look like, you know, the nations that they've been scattered in, but yet through the lineage, right, of their father, right, they're Israelites, right? This is what you see a lot of the Israelites, right, the mentality that they're in, right, that Stockholm Syndrome mentality, right, which as you see right here, it says mind control, Stockholm Syndrome. It says a psychological phenomenon in which hostages express empathy and have positive feelings towards their captors, sometimes to the point of defending them, you know, with the, you know, with our people, man. You know, Jake is simple, man, you know, and you know, you really can't get too deep, you know, with Jake, man, you know, at all, right? So you ultimately, you know, you bring out, you know, basic scriptures, right? Basic understanding scriptures like Job 9:24, right? Who, you know, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, right? If not, where and who is he, right? And you bring that out, right? And you ultimately ask them, hey, who is ruling the earth as of right now, you know? And, you know, you ultimately, you know, you try to get them to see, which it's evident, right? It's clear, it's evident who is in control of the earth as of right now, right? It's the self-proclaimed so-called white man who is the physical counterpart of the spiritual demon Satan. And when you ultimately point that out to Jake, Jake will automatically, you know, come at you, right? Jake will automatically turn against you because he has that Stockholm Syndrome mentality where you can't talk about Esau Edom, man. You're not allowed to talk about, you know, the so-called white man, you know, because he's given us freedom of choice, or he's given us jobs, or he's given us this, that, and the third, which in reality we don't have. You know, we're you know, there's no such thing as free will. There's no such thing as freedom of choice, right? We have the illusion of choice where we don't have free will. We don't have, you know, a choice here. You know, we don't have freedom here. We're still slaves to this system. You know, when you try to ultimately break that down to Jake, you know, even a little bit, right? You might just use history, right? Which the Bible is the, you know, the ultimate history book, but nonetheless, right? You might just use recent secular history, and you might not even bring out scripture. And Jake just, you know, is all about, you know, saving the so-called white man, you know, all about saving the so-called white man, which you even see that, you know, whether they took the bag or not, right? You see that within, you know, a lot of these, you know, the heads, right, of these different Israelite camps. You know, you're not allowed to talk about the so-called white man. And as soon as you start talking about the so-called white man, oh, well, you're racist, or you're this, you're that, you know. So Jake is simple, man, right? They're in this mindset, right? It also says Stockholm Syndrome is proposed condition to explain why hostages occasionally develop a psychological bond with their captors. It is named after an attempted bank robbery in 1973 in Stockholm, Sweden, in which 4 people were held hostage, but later refused to testify against the robbers, you know? And again, this is the mentality that, you know, you see within our people, not only today, but as you read in the scriptures, man, you know? Matter of fact, I got a couple accounts, but let me start with this, right? This is Romans chapter 15 and verse 4. It says, for whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. Right? So whenever, we read about these different accounts and we see the same mentality that, our people were in, right, in the time of the wilderness, right, in the time of Moses, the same mentality that they were in then, they're in today, right? So we can ultimately, again, extrapolate, right, the different things that they say, the different, mindset that they had, and apply it to today, But let me go back. I had it pulled up, Numbers the 11th chapter, right? And I'm just going to get to the point, man, because again, they're in the wilderness, right? And the Lord had done many, many, many great miracles, right, for the Israelites in the wilderness, right? One of them being given, right, that manna, right? This is Numbers 11 and verse 1. It says, and when the people complained, we're talking about the Israelites, right? It says, it displeased Yahweh, and Yahweh heard it, and his anger was kindled. And the fire of Yahweh burnt among them and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. Because ultimately those Israelites, right, that were in that mentality, right, were ultimately burnt up. And this is exactly what you're going to see, right, happen, in this time, right? Those wicked Israelites that want to continue to, ultimately, consent unto the the mindset and religion and lifestyle of the heathens. That's what's going to happen to them, man. They're going to get burnt up. They're going to be destroyed. Verse 2, it says, and the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto Yahweh, the fire was quenched, right? It says, and he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of Yahweh burnt among them. It says, in the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting. And the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? Right? We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. So first and foremost, there's no faith. You've seen all of those miracles that the Lord did, but yet here you are, right, still wanting to go back into Egypt, still wanting to go and be in that captivity, right? Knowing that the Lord ultimately, even knowing, right, that the Lord delivered you out of their hand, right? That you were captives and slaves and we were being overworked, right? You have to understand that captivity was extreme, just in itself, right? This is why America is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, because of the hard bondage, right? We were doing hard bondage over in ancient Egypt, and now we're doing hard bondage in spiritual Egypt. So either way, the bondage was hard, and Jake was all about it, man. Wanted to go back. That's that Stockholm Syndrome mindset. That's that loving your oppressor mindset, man. In which, you see that same mindset in Jake today. Fucking, why would you want to defend someone who's systematically, institutionally, economically, financially, socially, all these different things, right, has put us at the very bottom, right? Set up a system that is completely against you, but here you are wanting that system to further on, wanting that system to stay around, and you try to point these things out to Jake, and Jake don't care. Jake is so fucking simple. You're not allowed to bring out history. Otherwise, they'll sit there and say, oh, well, who wrote that? Right? Who wrote that article? Who this, that, and the third? Right? When you bring out some information that has some type of facts, right, that's other than what was mainstream taught or mainstream known, right? As soon as it's something that they don't know about, all of a sudden it's questionable, right? But something that's mainstream taught, it could be lies, but because it's mainstream, all of a sudden it's truth. And that's just, man, Jake be pissing you the fuck off with that shit, man. Like, Jake, you just believe everything, but as soon as you're told something that's outside of what you're normally taught or what you're normally being shown, all of a sudden it has to be fake. If it's not taught by the so-called white man, it's fake, right? As the scriptures say right here, it says, what does it say? Poor man's, I know it's in the Apocrypha, if I'm not mistaken. It said, rich man's words. What is it? Come on now. Let me find. I found it right here. This is Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 14. It says, there was a little city and a few men within it, and there came a great king against it and besieged it and built great bulwarks against it. Now there was found in it a poor wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city, yet no man remembered the same poor man, right? Because he's not rich, right? He's not, you know what I mean? He doesn't have status, right? He can have, wisdom, right? He could ultimately be telling you the truth, breaking the things down to you. But because he's not a rich man, he doesn't have status, all of a sudden it's like, hey, whatever, right? Verse 16, then said I, wisdom is better than strength. Nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard, right? It says the words of wise men are heard in quiet more than the cry of him that ruleth among fools. So again, right, that poor man's wisdom, right, is not heard, right? It's despised, meaning it's put to the side. It is what it is, right? It's not, they're not going to listen to it, right? It says, nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised. So when we're out here breaking things down, right, in the spirit of Yahweh Hashem Yahshua, bringing out the truth, they cast it behind them. They just cast it behind them, man. And that's what, 2/3 of our people do, right? They don't want to hear the truth. What does it say, Isaiah, the 30th chapter, right? Prophesy unto us deceits. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want none of it. But they'll listen to Esau Edom, right? They'll listen to, his false prophets, Again, that Stockholm syndrome, man, They even did it, they even, again, right? Just another example, right? You see that mentality even, right, in the time of Yahweh Shai, right? To St. John, the 19th chapter, verse 15 is the point, but verse 13, it says, when Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Yahweh Shai forth and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the pavement, but in the Hebrew, Gabbatha, right? It says, and it was the preparation of the Passover, or the Pesach in the Hebrew. It says, in about the 6th hour, and he saith unto the Jews, behold your king, right? It says, but they cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate saith unto them, shall I crucify your king? The chief priests answered, we have no king but Caesar. Right? And we were under the captivity of the Romans at that time. So they would rather, right, Yahweh Shai coming to ultimately, liberate them. First and foremost, we understand that first, Yahweh Shai ultimately had to come and, and prophecy had to play out, right? Yahweh Shai had to be that sacrifice. But ultimately, Yahweh Shai shed his blood, gave up his own life so that we can be forgiven, so that we can receive salvation. And they still went against Yahweh Shai, right? They would rather be, they would rather follow, the Edomite, right? Caesar, right? They would rather, basically, cheer for, their captor as their king rather than Yahweh Shai, right? That, again, that's that Stockholm syndrome. That's that loving your oppressor, loving oppression mentality, man. and we understand that Esau Edom is going to be destroyed, right? But as we've seen in Numbers, the 11th chapter, right, 2/3, the wicked Israelites, right, that ultimately wanted to, despise Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, that want to despise this truth, that want to, ultimately trust in perverseness and oppression, and they were ultimately destroyed. They want to continue to murmur. They want to continue to talk against Yahweh Shai, right? Mock, his prophets and so on and so forth. The Lord rose up, you know, and destroyed those wicked Israelites, which is what you're going to see in the times to come, right? The Lord is going to destroy these wicked Israelites, you know, here in America, right? The wicked Israelites in general, you know, wherever they're at. You know, the Lord is gonna destroy them, right? Right along with their oppressor, right? As it says, they'll join hand in hand, right? Right? Let's look that up. It's Proverbs, if I'm not mistaken. Right here, Proverbs 11:21. It says, though hand join in hand, the wicked shall not be unpunished, but the seed of the righteous shall be delivered. Right? The wicked shall not be unpunished. I mean, they're going to, the Lord's finna deal out that judgment, that punishment, man. Right? And you want to, you know, ultimately, you know, hold your, you know, your oppressor's hand and kumbaya with them and have that empathy. Well, you're going to be destroyed right along with them, man. You're going to be destroyed right along with this damn devil, man. There's no way that you're going to be able to escape that judgment. You want to love your oppressor. You want to, you know, walk with your oppressor. Hey, well, guess what? That's going to be the end of you. You will be destroyed, man. You wicked Israelites that trust in perverseness and oppression, and you're going to be destroyed, right? Let's grab that. In Isaiah the 30th chapter, I actually grabbed it, or I quoted it earlier. Isaiah 30. Was that 9? Right here. Verse 9, yeah, I'll start at verse 9. It says that this is a rebellious people, talking about you Israelites, right? It says lying children that will not hear the law of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. You don't want to hear this truth, you know? They don't want to hear no truth, really, right? It doesn't matter what you're talking about. They don't want to hear truth, period. You know, let alone the scriptures, right? Verse 10, it says, which say to the seers, see not, and to the prophets, prophesy not unto us. Right things, speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceits. Get you out of the way, turn aside out of the path, cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. Right? It says, wherefore thus saith the Holy One of Israel, because you despise this word and trust in oppression and perverseness and stay thereon, therefore this iniquity shall be to you as a breach ready to fall, swelling out in a high wall whose breaking cometh suddenly at an instant. Meaning you're going to be destroyed, right? It's going to build up, and boom, it's going to burst in destruction, man. You know? You know, Esau's not going to be able to save you. You know, Esau's not going to be able to help you. He's not set up to do that. He's set up as a whooping stick because we went off. He's not set up to help you or to benefit you or, you know, anything like that at all. You know? And his ultimate, you know, his path is to be destroyed. You know, rooted out of the power seat, put into captivity, right? And eventually just completely destroyed as a nation, right? And those who are here, right, any of the heathen and even 2/3 of our people that are here in America, right, are all going to be destroyed, period, man. Why would you want to receive the same judgment as a man that ultimately oppressed you for hundreds and hundreds of years? That doesn't even look at you, you know, as a full person, but looks at you as 3/5 of a person. You're a fraction of a whole. Is basically what he's saying. And you want to save this devil? Fuck out of here, man. The Lord going to destroy you. You're going to be destroyed right along with him, man. You know, you wicked ass 2/3, you Stockholm syndrome ass fucking Israelites, man. Fuck this damn devil, man. You know? He's going to be destroyed. And if you want to receive the same judgment as him, then go ahead. You know? You know, and that was ultimately the point that I wanted to get. You know, I just wanted to ultimately speak on that right quick, man. Because, again, that's the mentality you see within a lot of Israelites today. You know, that Stockholm syndrome. You know, wanting to save Esau, man. Fuck Esau, man. You know? But with that, Lord will, is that a fine, Lord will, straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rechak Wadash, that belongs to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elder great millstone. Till next time I say shalom.